You know that point in the night where it's not late anymore, it's early? That dead space between 2 and 4 a.m. where the world feels empty? That's my shift. I work the overnight at the Route 47 diner, right off the interstate. We never close, we're always hiring, and they don't ask questions. For people like me, clinging to the edge, it's a lifeline. At least, it was. Until last Tuesday. That's when I learned why the pay is so good, and why some customers aren't customers at all. It was a typical dead night, the kind where the coffee pot gurgles like it's dying, and the fluorescent lights hum a funeral dirge. My coworker, Chloe, was texting furiously, her face pinched with worry. "My mom's freaking out. My kid's got a fever. I gotta go. Can you cover for me, please, Mia?" "Go," I said. "I've got it." What else was I gonna say? We look out for each other here. She vanished into the parking lot, her beat-up sedan coughing to life. That left me and Frank, the cook. Frank was a man of few words and many smoke breaks. He saw Chloe leave, gave me a nod, and slipped out the back door for a cigarette. I was alone for about 5 minutes. The little bell above the door chimed. Not a loud, cheerful ring. It was a dull, flat clink. A family walked in. A mom, a dad, a little boy, a little girl. They moved smoothly, too perfectly in sync. My eyes flicked to the parking lot. Empty. No car. I thought, maybe they parked around back. A stupid, hopeful thought. I don't remember their faces. Not really. It's like trying to remember a dream. But their clothes. I remember every stitch. It was like a black and white TV show had vomited them into my diner. The dad in a crisp plaid shirt and khakis, the mom in a poodle skirt and a frilly apron like she'd just stepped out of a 1950s detergent commercial. The kids were pristine, perfect hair, perfect clothes, not a scuff on their little saddle shoes. My skin prickled. Something was wrong, deep in your DNA wrong. Frank came back in from his smoke break. He took one look at them, frozen in their booth, and his face went pale. Without a word, he turned and walked straight back into the kitchen. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. I grabbed my order pad, my hand shaking just a little. "Welcome to Route 47. Can I get you folks something to drink?" All 4 of them turned their heads at exactly the same time. Their smiles were identical, plastic. "4 glasses of milk, please," the father said. His voice was folksy, too folksy, like a bad actor reading a line. I poured the milk. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They just watched me. The condensation from the cold glasses began to form perfect, identical puddles on the cable. You ready to order?" I asked. "We're waiting for someone," the mother sang. Her voice was like a music box winding down. I backed away, pretending to wipe down the counter. The silence was deafening. It was the silence of a tomb. Then the little boy spoke, but the voice that came out wasn't a child's. It was a dry, ancient rasp, like stones grinding together. "We told you, we're waiting." I jumped, dropping my rag. All 4 sets of eyes locked onto me. Their smiles were gone, replaced by a terrifying, hollow emptiness. That's when I saw Frank through the circular window in the kitchen door. He was frantically waving me back. I didn't need to be told twice. I backed into the kitchen, never taking my eyes off them. The moment the door swung shut, Frank grabbed my arm. His grip was iron. "Listen to me," he whispered, his voice raw with a fear I'd never heard from him. "Those things out there are not people. You see that?" He pointed to a massive, industrial-sized bag of rock salt in the corner. "You take that and you pour a line across the front of this doorway, wall to wall. No gaps. You understand me? No gaps." I was too terrified to argue. I dragged the heavy bag, my heart hammering, and poured a thick white line across the threshold. Through the window, I could see the family. They hadn't moved a muscle. They were just waiting. Frank was pouring his own salt, making a wide circle around us. I noticed then there was already a permanent-looking salt line sealing off the back exit.
"What is happening?" I breathed. "They're hungry," was all he said. Then he pointed to the circuit box. "When I kill the lights, you get in this circle and you do not move. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see." He took a deep breath, and then he threw the main breaker. The diner plunged into absolute, silent darkness. A second later, the world exploded. The screaming started. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of metal tearing, of bones breaking, of every bad memory you've ever had given a voice. It felt like needles in my brain. I clamped my hands over my ears and screamed myself, but I couldn't even hear it. The kitchen doors blasted open. It wasn't a family anymore. It was a mass. A shifting, slithering darkness studded with eyes that glowed with a sickly yellow light and mouths filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth. It smelled of ozone, spoiled meat, and old graves. It slammed against the salt line I'd poured. It recoiled, hissing. It stretched and flowed along the line, a black tide, searching for a weakness, for a single grain out of place. It wanted in. I felt a warm trickle from my nose. Blood. Frank grabbed my hood, yanking me back as I started to sway forward, almost hypnotized by the horror. "Don't you look at it!" he roared over the shrieking. "Close your eyes." I squeezed my eyes shut, sobbing, praying for it to end. I don't know how long it lasted. I must have passed out. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping. Dawn was breaking. I was lying on the cold kitchen floor. Every muscle in my body ached. Frank was sweeping up the salt with a special broom. The salt wasn't white anymore. It was a charred, smoky black and reeked of sulfur. I stood up, my legs wobbling. I made 2 cups of coffee, my hands shaking so badly I spilled half of it. We sat at a booth in the now sunlit, perfectly normal-looking diner. "What were they?" I asked. Frank lit a cigarette, his hands steady. "They're called the Travelers. Story goes, a family vanished on this stretch of highway back in the 50s. Their car was never found. Sometimes they come back, and they're hungry for company." "And the salt? The lights?" "Salt purifies. Lights, they attract more customers. Can't have that." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" He gave me a look that was almost pitying. "And you would have believed it?" The bell above the door chimed. A real trucker walked in, stretching his arms. "Quiet night?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Quiet enough." I'm still working at the Route 47. Frank put his 2 weeks in. He got a job as a security guard upstate. Said he's done with night shifts. The bonus corporate gave us for the unfortunate electrical fire bought me a month in a motel. It's got a shower, a lock on the door. But every time that bell chimes after midnight, I freeze, and I look. And I pray it's just another trucker and not something wearing a familiar skin waiting for its next meal. I stay for the pay. I stay because I have to. But mostly, I stay because I know the rules now.
and I know how to pour a perfect, unbroken line of salt. Some rules aren't written in any employee handbook. You learn them by surviving the shift, and you pray you never have to use them again.
There's a special kind of silence that falls over a house after the kids are finally asleep. It's a silence you earn, a reward for surviving the chaos of the day. For 2 years, since my wife left, that silence was my sanctuary. My daughter Sophie is 9, my son Ben is 5. They're my whole world. And our little house on Blackwood Lane was our fortress. Quiet, safe, or so I thought. That silence was broken 2 months ago by a sound I had become all too familiar with. My son Ben's terrified crying. But this wasn't his usual nightmare cry. This was sharper, more present. I found him standing by my bed, his little body shaking, tears streaming down his face. "Daddy," he choked out, his words hiccuping between sobs. "The man in the window, he made a scary face." Ben's no stranger to monsters in the closet. We battled them all. But this was different. It was specific, terribly, awfully specific. He wasn't pointing at a shadowy corner, he was pointing out his bedroom window, toward the house next door. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. I took his hand and walked him back to his room. Sophie was awake in her top bunk, scowling down at us, her arms crossed. "He's always waking me up," she whispered, her voice thick with sleep and annoyance. "I never get any sleep because of his nightmares." I didn't turn on the light. I went to the window. Their room looks out onto the side of our neighbor's house. Mr. Albright lived there, a man in his late 50s, quiet, kept to himself. I'd maybe exchanged 5 words with him in the 3 years we'd been neighbors. His house was dark, 2 windows staring back at me like sightless eyes. One was the kitchen. The other, I didn't know. Its curtains were always drawn. I saw nothing. I calmed Ben down, let him camp in his little dinosaur tent in my room, and wrote it off as a bad dream. He slept there for the next 2 nights. On the 3rd night, it was Sophie who woke me. She was shaking my arm, her eyes wide in the darkness. "Daddy, it's Mr. Albright. He's making faces at me." The way she said it, the raw fear in her voice, so unlike her usual brave demeanor, it made the cold knot in my stomach turn to ice. I asked her to show me, and what she did, I will never forget it. Her face, it contorted. It wasn't my Sophie. She pulled her lips back from her teeth into a wide, horrible grin, but her eyes stayed wide and terrified. Then she held out her arm and began violently rubbing her other fist back and forth across it. She said he was playing the violin, Daddy, her voice trembling. He wasn't playing the violin. The meaning was chillingly clear. I told her to stop, my heart hammering against my ribs. This wasn't a nightmare. This was targeted, predatory. She said he'd made another gesture too, a beckoning motion. "Come here," with both hands. That was it. The line was crossed. I had Sophie sleep in my room too. The next morning, after dropping them at school, I marched next door. His car was in the driveway. I knocked and I knocked for a solid 5 minutes. Nothing. As I turned to leave, I caught a flicker of movement in the front window, a face ducking down out of sight. He was in there, watching me. I yelled at the house, told him to leave my family alone, and left for work, my hands shaking with rage. That Friday night, I set a watch. Kids in my room, me on the floor in theirs, back against the wall under the window. I had a movie on my phone, volume low, waiting. Just after midnight, I heard it. It was a sound that shouldn't exist. A wet, rhythmic, click-pop sound, like a tongue being pulled from the roof of a mouth. Then it shifted into a low, airy whistle, the sound of wind through a narrow pipe. It was coming from next door. His window was open. This was it. I took a deep breath, stood up, and ripped the curtain back. He was there. The dim light from his room illuminated him perfectly. That grin Sophie had mimicked was 1,000 times more horrifying on a grown man's face, a grotesque, stretched mask of mock joy. And his arms,
They were sawing at each other, a frantic, violent pantomime of self-destruction. When his eyes locked onto mine, an adult, not a child, the masks shattered. The fake smile vanished, replaced with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. He snarled, slammed his window shut, and yanked his curtains closed so hard I saw the rod shake. I stood there, stunned. I'd seen it. It was real. I fumbled for my phone to call the police. As I pulled it out, a tremendous thump hit the window pane behind me. I spun around. A large wet handprint was splayed high on the glass, a good 7 feet off the ground. No one could reach that without a ladder. There was no ladder. Adrenaline surged. I finished the call to 911, my voice tight as I gave the address. "My neighbor is threatening my children," I said, trying to keep it calm. I did a quick, terrified sweep of the house, checking all the doors and windows. They were locked. My last stop was my bedroom. I unlocked the closet safe, took out my handgun, and checked the chamber. My hands were steady, but my heart was a trip hammer.
Sophie was awake, peering out from the tent flap. "Daddy?" she whispered. "It's okay, sweetie. Just stay in the tent. Be super quiet for me, okay? Play a quiet game." I sat on the edge of my bed, facing the window. The curtains were drawn, but the full moon cast the room in a silvery glow. I could see the shape of the window perfectly. And then, I saw him. A dark silhouette appeared against the white fabric. He was just standing there, a tall, slender shape. He'd found us. He knew exactly which room we were in. He didn't move for what felt like an hour. I just watched, my finger resting on the trigger guard, every muscle in my body coiled tight. Then he stepped back from the window, and he raised his arms. My brain refused to process it. His arms, elongated, they unfolded, stretching out to impossible lengths. Each arm was as long as his entire body. I tried to rationalize it, a trick of the light, a shadow. He was holding poles. But then I saw the hands, 5 distinct fingers on each, twitching and grasping at the night air like the legs of a dying insect. He stepped forward, those impossible limbs moving with a dreadful, boneless grace. Thud, thud, thud. The hands, those huge, spidery hands, began to pound on the glass. The window shuddered in its frame. Sophie whimpered from the tent. I raised my gun, centering the sight on the center of the silhouette. I was seconds from pulling the trigger when the first sirens wailed in the distance, cutting through the oppressive quiet of the night. The figure outside froze. The pounding stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard a sound I can't describe, a wet, clicking, popping sound. And then, the elongated arms detached. They didn't fall limp. They simply sheared away from the body and dropped into the azalea bushes below with a soft, heavy crunch. The main body, the torso and head, turned and vanished into the darkness. The police found the arms. 2 adult human arms, severed cleanly at the elbow, lying in my flower bed. They were photographed, bagged, taken as evidence. They went into Mr. Albright's house. The door was unlocked. The 2 officers were inside for less than 2 minutes before they came out. The color had drained from their faces. The senior officer, a woman with a kind but now very grim face, approached me. "Sir," she said, her voice low and professional, but I could see the shock in her eyes. "The occupant of the home, a Mr. Robert Albright, is deceased. He's been deceased for some time. The state of the body, it's not consistent with a recent passing. We're talking weeks, maybe months." The official story is that a dangerous squatter had taken up residence in Mr. Albright's home after his death. A deeply disturbed individual who committed unspeakable acts and then targeted my family. The arms were a trophy, or a message. The case is open, but cold. No leads. But I don't believe that. I saw the rage on that thing's face when it saw me. I saw its arms unfold. I saw them fall away. That was no squatter. We don't live in that house anymore. We're staying with my sister 40 miles away. The for sale sign is up, but it might as well be a monument. Nobody wants a house with that story. Every night now, I check all the windows. I listen, not for breaking glass, but for a sound. A wet, clicking, popping sound, or a low, breathy whistle, because I know it wasn't about the house. It was about my children. And I have this terrible, chilling feeling that the thing that wore Mr. Albright's face is still looking for them. And it's learned to be more careful about who's watching back.